From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the morning news brief on Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. We begin in Peru, where rumor turned to fact over the weekend, as President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski gave a pardon to the jailed former leader Alberto Fujimori, apparently the price he paid for votes against his impeachment on Thursday. 79-year-old Alberto Fujimori learned of the pardon in his hospital bed, alongside his son Kenji, who led 10 members of the Fuerza Popular Party to oppose the impeachment of Kuczynski. Fujimori had been taken to the hospital on Saturday from prison, where he was serving 25 years for human rights abuses and corruption. Supporters of the former president, who oversaw a military campaign against rebels in the 1990s that killed tens of thousands, celebrated outside the hospital. Fujimori's daughter, Keiko, who had led the impeachment attempt against current President Kuczynski, also arrived at the hospital to visit her father.
We appreciate the decision made by the government. We also hope the steps that have been taken does not bring hate and promotes a reconciliation, which is what we are hoping for. Now we are going to go up and see my father. Thank you.
There were clashes with the police as anti-government protesters expressed their anger at the deal outside the clinic where their Peruvian Japanese is staying. They said the medical arguments for releasing Fujimori were invented and demanded justice for the thousands of civilians killed by death squads during Alberto Fujimori's presidency.
We believe the pardon was carried out in a legal manner. The medical report that supposedly sanctioned this was a fraud. The reality is that this sadly was a political agreement between the Fujimorists and the current government of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski.
We are totally opposed to the pardon because Fujimori is a war criminal. He sterilized women against their will, had union leaders and journalists killed.
Guatemala has followed the example of President Donald Trump and announced it will move its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. The government of President Jimmy Morales was one of the only 8 that voted with the United States in a debate on the move at the United Nations General Assembly last week. Honduras, along with 5 Pacific Island states, were the others to defend Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem, which has triggered protests across the Muslim world. Venezuela's Truth Commission has decided to release 80 opposition activists who were in jail accused of organizing violence during 4 months of protests earlier this year. The first 36 prisoners were freed on Saturday night. The gesture of goodwill comes after progress was made in talks with the Venezuelan opposition in the Dominican Republic. Earlier this month, the move was announced by Delcy Rodriguez, the president of the Constituent Assembly, which set up the Truth Commission.
We've made a recommendation for the benefit of more than 80 people. These recommendations have already been made known to the different bodies of the criminal justice system. And there has also been a report that was sent to the President of the Republic. And we hope that in the upcoming hours, this release will be carried out.
Venezuela's Constituent Assembly also decided to declare the ambassadors of Canada and Brazil as persona non grata for their persistent interference in domestic affairs.
We have decided to declare persona non grata to Canada's Chargé d'Affaires for his persistent and insistent rude and vulgar interference in the internal affairs of Venezuela, despite the fact that the Venezuelan Chancellery has for years called for the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations to be respected, and declare the ambassador of Brazil persona non grata until the de facto government restores constitutional order in this brother country.
Santa Maria Key is again one of the most important tourist hotspots in Cuba. After making a quick recovery from Hurricane Irma, which hit the island in early September. Now the Biosphere Reserve will be hosting the next International Tourism Fair, FIT Cuba 2018.
This treasure of fine sand and warm water is Santa Maria Key, one of the touristic wonders located in the north of Villa Clara. This islet, once visited by corsairs and pirates, is now a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, preferred by the visitors that arrive to the Keys in the northern Cuba.
El sol, la playa con arena blanca.
The white sand beach, the sun and the people. I think this is paradise.
Me parece que es el paradiso aquí.
Despite the damages Hurricane Irma caused, the 14 hotels located in the Keys of Villa Clara are normally operating since November 1st. In Santa Maria Key, visitors can find small resorts full of luxuries to comfort family hotels.
The resorts here are much better than the ones in other countries of the Caribbean. Above all, the people are the best.
What surprised me the most, how polite and cultural is it here in Cuba. Sometimes people talk about it as an underdeveloped country, but when you come here, you can find that people have a culture that I would like to see in Europe, that working people could have.
In Santa Maria Key, there are 7 hotels under construction to reach 12,600 operating rooms for 2020.
We're preparing Santa Maria Key for the International Tourism Fair, FIT Cuba 2018. After Hurricane Irma hit, we were forced to bring forward all the improvement in our hotel infrastructure and the recovery of the beaches. There's no doubt this has been a renovation. It gives us the opportunity to have new hotels that will allow the Keys to fully develop as a tourism force for 2018.
de desarrollo que está prevista para este año 2018.
Santa Maria Key also guards one of the villas founded by the Spanish in 1515, known as San Juan de los Remedios. Famous for being the only city with 2 Catholic churches, a town full of history, legends, and secrets. Fabiola López, Telesur, Villa Clara, Cuba.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Former South American soccer officials have been convicted on corruption charges brought by the U.S. in 2015. The prosecutors said that these officials had were involved in the CONMEBOL scheme in corruption. Juan Angel Napur and Brazil's former chief were found guilty on several counts, including conspiracy. The former president of the Confederation said the prosecutors have charged 42 people and entities regarded in this case.
My answer is obviously we're disappointed. How can you can't? It's Christmas, you know. So we're disappointed. The judge made a decision.
Argentina's president Mauricio Macri pushed through his pension reform in the face of massive protest. Pensioners in Chile have shown solidarity with their fellow pensioners next door. They too fear an attack from their newly elected right-wing president.
A spontaneous gathering of social and union leaders. Passers-by began to support the demonstration when they saw the flags of the No to Private Pensions movement heading towards Argentina's embassy in Santiago.
We are here to show solidarity with the people of Argentina and to tell them that we are proud of them. We encourage their strength. We have to continue to fight the governments of Macri and Piñera that seek economic development at the expense of people's conditions.
Conditions that could get worse for Chile's workers and retirees if elected President Sebastián Piñera doesn't listen to the movement's demands.
We think it's outrageous that around the world we are seeing this kind of repression against those who denounce and demand a little social justice. We are also likely to suffer those same consequences.
The Minister of Finance, Nicolás de Izaguirre, said that the project to reform the pension system would not be ready before the end of the government of Michelle Bachelet.
This project probably will not be ready. We will continue to look for a consensus, but if we can't, it's the next government, which was chosen by a big majority, that will have to decide what to do with this project.
Although a promise of President Michelle Bachelet's, the No to Private Pensions movement was always critical of the government's initiative and wants a referendum on the issue.
We feel like the initiatives that have been presented do not improve but worsen the pension system.
The social leaders are aware that a right-wing government, like Piñera's, could put their demands at risk, but they have hope of the new Congress, which now includes the Broad Front.
Those who took our pension funds are still there. They were there with President Bachelet, and they will still be there with Piñera. We hope that with the new Congress, with new members who say they are committed to our demands, we can make some changes.
But for now, everything is still the same.
In Guatemala, in the Reina zone, Uspantán, the fourth community hydroelectric plant was built thanks to the group effort of hundreds of families that have lived without power for more than 40 years. The inhabitants say that they have achieved power autonomy with this project.
The air turbines of the new community hydroelectric opened in La Gloria village, in the Reina area, Uspatán, Quiche, that will benefit more than 100 families of the region.
We are inaugurating a great project that was a sacrifice for the community, but we are very happy to achieve this project that is now illuminating each one of the houses.
It is the fourth community hydroelectric that has opened in this area, which was driven by the collective work of inhabitants and strengthened with the support of non-governmental organizations.
What we have achieved with these projects are a great example of how the communities can have self-autonomy to have their own power, and that strengthens the togetherness of the community.
The families say that for 4 decades they have lived without power, and they applaud the project's completion. They say that they accomplished it with the hard work of the people.
What we did is support each other. There were women, men. If the husbands weren't there, the women helped out.
They emphasize that this work was designed without harming the environment, contrary to what is promoted by the state, that has been criticized for the strong environmental damage that they caused.
We took 10% of the river, 600 meters, and we returned it without any type of pollution, being careful that it doesn't impact the water.
This region operates a hydroelectric with state funds called Palo Viejo. They said, however, that after 4 years of operation, none of the affected communities have power.
And we'll be back soon. Stay with us. Now let's take a look at our World News Roundup.
At least 11 people were killed when a suicide bomber launched an attack near an Afghan intelligence agency compound in Kabul. Another 5 were injured when the attacker struck as workers were arriving at the National Directorate of Security Offices. This latest attack comes a week after militants stormed an NDS training center in Kabul. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attack.
The sound was too loud, and then suddenly it was too dusty and people were fleeing from every corner. Security forces came quite soon, and fearing the possibility of a second explosion, they stopped people getting close to the area.
Philippine authorities have ordered a criminal investigation into a shopping mall fire on Saturday that authorities say likely killed 37 people, including call center staff from an American firm. The country's Justice Secretary announced the inquiry as firemen prepared to enter what remained of the NCCC mall located in Davao. The firemen hope to retrieve those who perished in the blaze. Pope Francis strongly defended immigrants in his Christmas Eve Mass on Sunday, comparing them to Mary and Joseph finding no place to stay in Bethlehem. Pope Francis said that faith demands that foreigners be embraced. This is the Pope's fifth Christmas as leader of the world's 1.2 billion Roman Catholics. The cold weather and lack of sunshine didn't stop hundreds of people from celebrating Christmas Day on Australia's most famous Bondi Beach. Locals as well as tourists posed for photos next to a Christmas tree, some of them even sporting Santa hats. British tourists who were not disturbed by the weather made the most of their first time on the beach.
At home, if we were at Christmas, we'd be in front of the fire, wearing like jumpers and scarves, trying to keep warm, but here it's on the beach in our swimsuits. Yeah, amazing!
Now for a look back at one of the big stories in 2017. Honduras was hit by a political crisis early this month after an alleged electoral fraud was committed during the presidential elections on November 26. We have a prepared special report.
Just hours after Honduras held its presidential elections, the opposition alliance candidate Salvador Nasralla celebrated his victory against President and candidate Juan Orlando Hernández. With more than 70% of the ballot boxes processed by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, he had a 5-point lead, and the Central American country was hopeful of a new government after years of political crisis and corruption scandals.
It's a shame that President Juan Orlando Hernández is such a sore loser. We have accepted all the tally sheets they presented, even if they had inconsistencies, and in spite of that, we are winning. What we want is to create jobs for the Honduran people. They need it. All our efforts will focus on creating jobs for more than 6 million of the poor.
But then, mysteriously, the Electoral Tribunal servers went down for more than a day, and Nasralla's lead evaporated, allowing Hernández to edge ahead by 3,000 votes. Faced with mounting criticism, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal stopped releasing any more results. Opposition supporters took to the streets across the country, while international observers said these events damaged the credibility of the electoral process.
This country will keep this ongoing peaceful mobilization. We're facing an electoral fraud, a fraud that was planned, and we are not going to allow this. We cannot be subjected to an electoral tribunal no one recognizes anymore.
This flower represents peace. People in Honduras have joined together because we all want peace in our country. We do not agree with the current government.
We are demanding the state to respect Honduras' popular will. The people decided that Nasralla should be the next president. They're still in the elections, and we're tired of so many injustices. That is why the people are protesting, to demand authorities to respect the people's popular will. Nasralla, president.
As both candidates claimed victory, the long silence from the Supreme Electoral Tribunal provoked political chaos. The opposition alliance denounced a systematic electoral manipulation and coup, while the president and candidate Juan Orlando Hernández thanked his supporters for choosing him as the next president of Honduras.
Al final la decisión favorece a uno de los candidatos, pero...
In order to determine the decision, it favors one of the candidates, but we also have to say that Hondurans have made a decision, have voted, and what we're doing is respecting the decision that they took. The tribunal has not modified any result, has not modified any ballot. What we have simply done is count the ballots which were not correct.
A huge amount of exit polls are being processed in real time as the ballots come in, and the count is more than clear and resounding that we won this election. That is what the polls say, and that is what the results we are seeing from the count are saying.
As the crisis in the country deepened, Hernández's Conservative National Party called on their supporters to defend their victory, and both sides confronted each other in the capital. At least 14 people were killed at the hands of the military police, dozens injured, and more than 800 detained, a situation denounced by activists and international observers.
It would be important to appeal to social calm and to wait for the results to be verified by everyone involved. For all the political parties to call for calm and, yes, of course, condemn every kind of violence that has occurred and which are not permitted in a democratic country.
2 weeks after Election Day, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal announced that the partial recount demanded by the opposition alliance of almost 5,000 election ballots showed the same result as before, but the opposition lodged a formal challenge to the result of the presidential elections and called for a vote-by-vote recount of all 18,000 ballot boxes to be carried out by an independent international commission.
No encontramos en ninguna mesa que abrimos evidencia.
We did not find in any ballot box we opened evidence of fraud, evidence of vote manipulation, evidence of ballot annulment without a reasoning, evidence of increase of votes without a reason in favor of a candidate. The ballots we have opened are the result of the will of the Hondurans expressed on November 26.
We are not making a simple demand, and I am very sure that the Electoral Tribunal can realize this. But the whole world knows about what is happening, and therefore I do not believe that the whole world will allow Honduras be robbed of the people's will.
One of the most extraordinary moments in this unresolved crisis was when several units of the Honduran police rebelled, including the elite Cobra Brigade. They refused to repress the protesters and said they were going on strike until there was a recount.
Our people are free, sovereign, and we are here to protect them. Therefore, we cannot confront and repress their rights. This is not about political ideas or labor demands. We are simply expressing our disagreements with what is happening.
As the police withdrew to the barracks, the protesters celebrated and chanted, "Police, our friends, the people are with you." But after 3 weeks of confusion and outcry, the Electoral Court in Honduras declared Juan Orlando Hernández as the new president, although the Organization of American States called for new elections to be held. The head of the OAS Observer Mission repeated that the poll had been marred by irregularities.
La MOE considera que ha observado un proceso de baja calidad.
The Electoral Observer Mission considered that it has observed a process of low electoral quality and therefore cannot settle the doubts over what has been announced today. The mission regrets once again the incidents of violence that have occurred in the elections, in different phases of the electoral process, and calls once again for all actors to stay calm and act responsibly.
Opposition supporters immediately took to the streets to protest, as they did almost every day since the poll on November 26th, to denounce what they see as a fraud.
Kenya's opposition rejected the legitimacy of the repeat presidential elections, in which they didn't participate. They proposed creating a resistance movement to open a new electoral process.
A charade purported to be an election.
The electoral farce has ended, said the opposition leader Raila Odinga.
Today, we return to the hard but essential task of making elections count and democracy work in Kenya.
What he suggests is to invalidate the elections by organizing assemblies of popular resistance.
We will not allow two megalomaniacs to destroy the dream of freedom and democracy. To destroy the dream of freedom and democracy that generations have sacrificed and worked so hard for.
The opposition alliance is in favor of dialogue, as long as the result is to organize fair and credible elections. With that purpose, Raila Odinga announced the creation of popular parliaments in order to defy the Uhuru and Ruto's government.
Economic boycotts, peaceful processions, picketing, and other legitimate forms of protest. If there is no justice for the people, let there be no peace for the government.
The political crisis in Kenya continues, but after the violent scenes last week during the elections, the leaders from both sides of the divide insist on looking for future solutions by exclusively peaceful means.
Residents of Bogota and tourists alike are in awe of an illuminated Christmas train that passes through the Colombian capital. The train is over 1,300 feet long and comprises of 14 train cars, whereas Santa Claus can be expected to pass through them as the train is in transit. It can carry 600 tourists at a time, and around a quarter are usually foreigners, who are all excited to take part. Christmas is here, and in Venezuela, festivities are in full swing. Despite an economic blockade and a short supply of goods, the Venezuelans are still able to get in the Christmas spirit, which includes eating their most celebrated festive food. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, has more.
Christmas shopping is in full swing in downtown Caracas. The streets are bustling with people as Christmas fast approaches, not the scenes you would expect from a so-called humanitarian crisis zone. Although basic shortages are a reality, Venezuela's most famous delicacy, the hallaca, is not. The hallaca is an iconic dish in Venezuelan culture. The food consists of European, indigenous and African ingredients. Thereby it symbolizes the country's multicultural heritage.
Keeping the traditions is important because if we lose it, we are not going to be the same. We should keep it to continue feeling Venezuelan.
The dish is solely produced just for Christmas and is traditionally affiliated with the family. Entire families often get together to produce and sell the dish. At this particular stand, the hallaca is selling at a subsidized price as Venezuelans unite to ease the financial burden at Christmas, a period where the family comes first. Tasty. So as an economic crisis here worsens in Venezuela and food scarcity becomes an even greater reality, Venezuelans here still find time to enjoy their most famous festive food, washed down with a glass of papelón. Feliz Navidad, or shall I say, Merry Christmas.
And we've come to the end of this morning newsread. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching, and we wish you all a very happy Christmas.
It is time to stop and listen to ourselves. Lay stress on the events in a country, an era, or a society. The most sensitive and human stories in Latin America and the world.